Hello and welcome to episode number two of Remembering Our Generations. I'm Jason J. Rock Houston and my wonderful co-host Vince Lupo. Vince, great fun doing episode one. Today we thought we'd talk about Cream's greatest hits, what some of our favorite songs are. So let's get into with you, like, and how you became a Cream fan.
Oh, this is interesting because when the Beatles came out, there was a division, right? There was Elvis, there was something that happened then, there was the Beatles. Before that, there was swing, and before that, and before that. Well, Cream, to me, started a whole different genre of sound. Uh, Hendrix, same thing. It was like boom, something completely different. Hendrix took everything a step further. Anyway, then when the Cream started off, they had their first album, which was predominantly blues, as we know. They were blues rock band, but steeped in the blues. And their first album had a lot of these covers and only a few originals, I believe it was. Then they had Disraeli Gears, and then they had Cream, Wheels of Fire, and then Goodbye, very short compilation of the end. And then came this baby, the
Yeah, yeah,
greatest hits, years later. This is more predominantly what we're going to talk about.
sure,
A
sure.
bunch of really cool songs off of this. So when I first heard them on the radio, it was boom, 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 boom. And it was like, what is this? And it was very, very interesting music. Something new, got your attention. Uh, Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce came from the Gary Bond organization out of that band. Clapton came out of the Blues Breakers with John Mayall, an incredible album, by the way. If you're any of you interested, get that record. Oh my goodness, or get that recording downloaded on Spotify, wherever.
Okay.
Amazing stuff. These guys came together and created this brand new sound. It was almost the beginning of metal,
Yeah.
but before it was metal, so it was blues rock. Then they progressed into a psychedelic kind of rock. And we'll explain the timeline in a moment. And then they just had a band discussion and they broke apart. Just 3 years. That's all they had. But their music lasted forever and ever. It's still going on strong. We play some of their songs and bangers. And so launch into what you want to know or what we want
Okay.
to talk
Well,
about because, wow.
with you're much more of a Cream fan than I am. And what I mean by that is it has a lot to do with my age. I came in the world in 1971, and I definitely am a Cream fan. But like a lot of people, I guess, I was more familiar with, the big radio hits, the stuff you hear on classic
Sure.
rock radio. I grew
Sure.
up with a lot of Eric Clapton solo hits. So when we talked about doing this show, and I got the very best CD myself. That's kind of my reference point here. I was surprised to learn not just that Eric Clapton wrote everything, but that the other guys were equally involved. That Jack Bruce, the bass player, was very much involved with the songwriting, much to my surprise.
Yet there's no surprise now, but
I
when you
mean,
learn about their
learning about it,
history,
yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
And so Clapton was really not the primary voice either.
yeah, yeah, which is
Bruce was
interesting.
the primary voice.
Yeah,
So a lot of the stuff shifted his way. Baker put his unique style of playing to everything, very unique. So much so that when they came out, this was when I was starting to blossom as a
yeah,
drummer. After 4 years of playing, I started to pick up bits and pieces. Now, let's put it this way: I have a lot of mentors
yeah,
as drumming goes, and I'm not really because I didn't sit with them, but learning the different styles of these different guys. And so Baker was like this whole new world of drumming to me, using the usage of the toms, the really odd way that he kind of played, which not always in tempo. He
yeah,
would play in tempo, then break off and do a fill that would, like, what did he just do? So I learned from him as well as many other guys in the future, but I still use many of the fills that he introduced in the song Toad, which is at the end of the very first record, which is predominantly one giant drum solo.
Yeah.
When I was a kid that age, 16, my friends were like, knew I could kind of do it. So we actually did that song live at 16, 17 years old.
Wow.
And so it built a reputation partly from that, you
And,
know.
and you know that
So
predates even
Baby Ginger.
yeah, that even predates Led Zeppelin, doing Moby Dick and John Bonham and that. And so
Absolutely.
Ginger Baker, of course, like you're talking about, I mean, he was a real showman of a drummer. I mean, that's what he became known for. I mean, really flashy drummer. He's one of the guys you go see in concert back in the day. I would imagine all eyes were on the drummer.
Well, and for good reason. He was a presence and a force behind. He wasn't a light drummer. He was an in your face, but tasty, but in your face player with very unique style. When you hear him play, you know it's him.
Oh yeah,
You know,
yeah.
if you're hearing a song that you don't realize who it is, you know who it is. That's it.
And
Go ahead.
one of the songs I'm it's on my list is obviously "Sunshine of Your Love." That was a big radio hit for the band. And interestingly enough, I come to find out again that's a Jack Bruce song. And you listen to that, the bass riff. It's not so much the guitar riff, although it's thought of as a guitar song because of Clapton's playing, but it's basically centers around his bass riffing.
When I remember the story behind that song, I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah,
Uh, this song was not recorded that way the first time. I don't even know if that recording exists
yeah,
anywhere.
that would be
It was
great.
done more straight. They said put an Indian an Indian beat behind it, and it worked. And when we first heard that on the radio, it broke all kinds of ground. That song we still play in bangers today,
Oh wow,
and I love to play it, especially that ending that goes really wild.
yeah.
It's just one of those things, but it makes the tune because it's the outro of the song. And so again, folks, just unique, just totally one of a kind player and guy.
Yeah.
Just and guy, wow.
And what's interesting about this album here, the very best of, is it's got the obvious hits you've heard on the radio before, but then it's got some other songs that aren't as well known, and they're included on the very best of. And I think the reason for that is, you know, every song is pretty much a kick-ass song. I mean, they even
Oh,
have,
absolutely.
if you can believe it, they even have a song on here about tennis.
Oh yeah, anyone for tennis. Now, interesting, as we wrote back and forth a little bit, the very last song on this album became one of their best known songs called Badge.
Okay.
And we played that when it came out, and we want to redo that again with bangers, and a very cool song that was just, I think, a side song that just never made any records until the very last. I think it was the last track on Wheels of Fire. No, on Goodbye,
Mhm.
which was a throwaway record. They put three live songs that had already appeared on Wheels of Fire and a couple of others, and then there's this song, Badge,
Wow.
and it was a standout because it was so unique sounding. You know.
And I got to go back to "Sunshine of Your Love" for just a minute because interesting facts I learned was that actually they wrote the song after Jack Bruce and Eric Clapton attended of all things a Jimi Hendrix concert, and that was kind of what influenced or inspired the song. And oddly enough, I don't know if Jimmy actually knew that, but he actually covered he did his own version of that song. I was reading.
Wow. I didn't realize that. The song, the tone
Yeah.
on the guitar is like a Hendrix tone. If you think about it, that was a very unique sound in its day. And on that record, that was their biggest album, Disraeli Gears, their
Okay.
biggest record. Fresh Cream was the very first record, and in reading in some of the history, they wanted to call it Cream the band Cream because they were the cream of the crop
Wow,
kind of
wow.
a thing. That's where Cream came from.
I kind of think that was an old British saying I heard too somewhere. And of course, all the guys were English, but oddly enough, Felix Populan, who was a bass player from Mountain, he produced "Sunshine of Your Love," and he said in a later interview that when they were initially in the studio recording that, that he didn't really see the commercial potential of the song, if you can believe that.
Well, I understand, it wasn't a 2.5 minute song, and it was a little longer,
Yeah,
and it had that unique beat to it, but it had melody,
yeah,
and it had some harmony, and then it had that power drumming. A very unique song in rock history, let's say.
yeah,
It really cemented them. That album was the offshoot of the first album, the first one being Fresh Cream, which was very blues based, a lot of covers of all blues men, things like that. When they went into this other album, they started writing more of their own material,
sure.
and the psychedelic era started.
Oh, wow.
So this was 67, the summer of love, and all the psychedelics that were out there. So while some people think of this as psychedelia blues rock, there's some psychedelics in it. We're using wah-wahs and overdrives and some weird tones and some strange transitions in songs. But that album became their biggest album. And if you go through each of those tracks on that record,
Yeah.
you find out hit, 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 not literally, because a lot of them were what they call AOR, album oriented rock back in the
Oh, okay, interesting. Now another song I we were kind of discussing earlier today when we were chatting was that I always loved was the song Politician. Now what I love
day.
about it is, you know, back in the 60s and 70s, bands were just kind of getting into, of course, especially during the Woodstock era, getting into political stuff and writing political songs. This was maybe one of the very first ones, and what I love about it is um, the lyrics. I think everybody pretty much can agree, like you were saying, Vince, is everybody's idea of what a sleazy politician is. And I also love the fact that it doesn't matter really what side of political aisle you're on. I think that's kind of what everybody's view of a sleazy politician is. It doesn't seem to matter. And that's the cool thing about this song, I think, in particular.
Well, that's interesting because the setup is about it, come ride in my big black car,
Yeah.
which is obviously a thing about trying to draw a sexual partner into the car. At least that's what I got out of it.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Then the second verse is about I support the left, but I'm leaning towards the right,
Mm-hmm.
which means they want to just serve themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They want to play maybe both sides of the fence for what? For votes.
Yeah. I
For
mean,
votes.
ultimately, um, again, no matter what side of political aisle you're on, I think ultimately a lot of politicians have that ambition to get that power. And a lot of people, I will say, don't have that integrity of, most people have principles, and you're like, well, I will do a certain thing to get elected, but I won't go this far, if you know what I mean. But there
Sure.
are those people that I'll do whatever it takes, man, to get that power and keep it.
It's to keep it.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
get it. It's one thing. It's like when you're a baseball player and you get to the major leagues. Now the object is to stay in them,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
don't want to go back. You don't want to go back to the minors and take bus rides. You want to fly first class somewhere,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
you want the best. You want 40,000 people. You don't want 4,000 people
yeah,
in such. So when they get power, their object, for the most people, is not to get in, get out and do
yeah,
something great. It's to get in and stay in because, well, there's notoriety, there's some fame, there's a way to try to manipulate
yeah.
um,
And then, of course, no
what
matter who you
happens
are,
in
it
society.
feeds that ego, to get up on TV that everybody's listening to me. It's just it's kind of like being a rock star, but it's a different aspect of that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that album that has a lot of the psychedelia tones of overtones of psychedelia, shall we say? You
yeah,
get into the last album or the third record, Wheels of Fire, which was a double album, or many double albums back in that day. When you get the double album, like shiny silver and black, very unique looking record You know who it is when you look at it if
Yeah,
you've
yeah,
ever had it.
yeah.
And on that, there are a number of live cuts, which was really cool to hear what they really sounded like in person, so to speak,
Mm,
but recorded, of course, all EQ'd out
sure,
and
sure.
balanced and things. But wow, you hear a band live. You didn't hear these guys, bands play
And this
live.
this was back in the day before they went back in the studio and did overdubs. I mean, it was one of
Those
those.
three guys.
No, but I mean, it was actually recorded live. Like a lot of
That's
times
right.
these days, they go and they fix stuff up, and you could really hear what you get a feeling of listening to live tracks like that, and you almost feel like you were there that night. It was recorded.
Sure. They have where you can correct your pitch,
Yeah, yeah,
singing pitch if you're a little off. There was three guys, and they just did a little bit of balancing, and they let the tape roll, and they put this out. I don't know how many times they were recorded live,
hmm,
but those are some really well done those live recordings, which were stunning at the time because you didn't have that coming from bands.
yeah,
You
yeah.
just couldn't.
I
It's
mean, I
just
mean, live albums really became a big thing, especially for the first time, like back in the 1970s. I mean, they had Frampton Comes Alive and all that stuff.
that was a little later when they got the little fancy with the recording stuff,
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, another song I want to ask you about, another big kind of hit for the band that is thought of, I guess, as an Eric Clapton song. Correct me if I'm wrong. Is White Room?
White Room, we were just have that on my mind to
Yeah,
talk to you about. We do that now in bangers. We include that in our shows. If we're not doing
yeah,
Sunshine or Swabler, we're doing that. And White Room has got the multi-tracked guitars.
uh,
I think there's like three guitars going with the bass
yeah,
and the drums. So there was multi-track recording going on. It's a bigger sound, a very cool tune, a really steady rock, but then it's broken up with that
yeah, 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 yeah.
2, 3, 1, 2. So 5 beats
Yeah.
per measure, and something again that they would do. It's kind of a psychedelia.
Yeah.
It's white room, with black curtains. I mean, a little bit of psychedelia in the lyrics and in the music, and then they get into the straight 4/4 stuff, real powerful stuff. So we love playing that
Yeah,
stuff.
I've heard
It's
people talking about like they play that song, and back in the day, like especially in the '60s, they'd be tripping out on stuff. Acid. I don't know
I
how
was
true.
still too young.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know how true that was, but that's another interesting thing in doing research for today's episode was, like I said, maybe because of my age, I was much more surprised that Eric Clapton wasn't the star, it wasn't the guy that wrote everything. I mean, it got to a point I think in Cream where everybody wanted to be the star. That's probably what caused the band break up to break up. But so, what do you remember from when the band did break up? Like, were you surprised when that was announced, or did it just kind of happen?
No, it didn't kind of happen because it was already in the wind.
Uh,
Uh, I was listening to FM by then, and after Wheels of Fire, they put out the Goodbye record, and then the DJs were explaining that this was it,
wow.
but nobody said why. We didn't hear the reasons why back
Hmm.
then. Just that things happen. Who knows? Everybody assumed it was drugs,
Yeah,
alcohol, but a lot of it really has to do with ego
yeah,
and probably in their case, some drugs, I would
yeah.
think, and alcohol. We know the path that their lives took later on, so that probably had something to do with the breakup. There was a sadness to it at the time. It wasn't like the Beatles breaking up, but it was just about on that level of like, oh my goodness. The worst was when our rock stars passed away
Sure, sure.
one at a time. That was really hard to take. But to see a band just break up out of the thin air when they were going so strong was like, don't get it.
And you make the point, Vince, they don't have a huge catalog of music, and yet look at the impact these guys made on the rock world. Their
Uh,
songs are being played all these years later. I mean, Eric Clapton is the sole surviving member of the band. He's kind of, you know, keeping the Cream flag going, and he's doing his solo stuff. Um, Now, I bet as a Cream fan, you would have much rather the band stuck together, but I'm sure you followed all the guys' solo careers and talk a little bit about that.
Well, I certainly followed uh, uh, Clapton. There's no question. Now I'm going to take everybody back at that time when they did these records, 66, 67, 68. That's all they did.
Uh-huh.
That they were saying that like Clapton is God. Everybody then heard it, and I'm sure that that has survived at some point.
Yeah, yeah,
I got news for you people. Clapton isn't God. So, but he was a guitar god, let's call
sure,
it
sure.
that. And to me, he was great, great blues player. I mean, fantastic, fast, all that stuff, tasty, very tasty.
Yeah,
And then there's Hendrix, and who can touch Hendrix? I mean,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
please, you know. But so I did follow his career, and I liked a lot of his later stuff. Let It Rain. I actually had the pleasure, just remembered, had the pleasure of seeing him twice live. I saw him with my son about 12 years or so ago in Anaheim.
Oh, wow.
And he did stuff that was all over the place, all the great stuff that he's done through the ages, some Cream and the Dominoes and a lot of the solo stuff. Many other stars were on that bill and that played with him on stage. But the first time I saw him was in 1970, I think it was 70, not 71. It could have been 71, with the original lineup of Derek and the Dominoes.
Oh, wow.
And it was incredible. And by the original lineup, I do mean with Dwayne Allman on stage. It was
Oh,
at my college the night before the Allman Brothers had played. So I went to both shows. I wasn't working that weekend. Don't know why. Maybe it was midweek. I can't
lucky
recall.
guy. Yeah, yeah, wow.
We were lucky.
Yeah.
Saw the Allman Brothers one night, and then the very next night was the Derek and the Dominoes with Dwayne on stage playing all the twin slide leads and all of this stuff. And I'm telling you, you couldn't. I'm getting the chills just thinking about it. How incredible they sounded, but played. Everything was precise, right down to the note. The tempos were perfect. One of my favorite drummers, Jim Gordon, playing Bobby Whitlock on keys.
Wow.
Just like, oh, what a great time, folks. I'm sorry that if you missed it, if you've never seen
I
either.
mean, Vince, that's why I do a show with you. You know, you're a real living rock and roll historian. I mean, you could give classes in rock and roll history. That's why we do this with you. Well,
Thank you, buddy.
I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know you got things to do, Vince. So we're going to get ready to wrap it up, and we'll do another show about a month from now. That's kind of a schedule we do. Before we let you go, do you have any upcoming shows? We're going to air this show sometime next week. Maybe I'm going to try to shoot for Monday. You have any upcoming shows you want to let the folks know about?
Yes, I do play with a local band here in Temecula, Murrieta area called the Anyone's Guest Band, and we're a local group plays everything from the '80s through today, some '70s, but mostly '80s through today. It's dance music, it's recognizable music, but it's everything. We play some dance music, some country, some blues, some rock, some whatever it is. We put it all together in and make a rock and roll stew out of it, so to
Yeah,
speak.
yeah,
And
and
then we've
wow,
got banger shows coming up in June and July. I play with a band in San Diego called Rolling Heartbreakers that does Petty and Stones, and I play with a lot of people. If you
where
all
did you
know,
find
I'm
the
a
time,
sub
man?
drummer for a number, so I'm busy as heck at my age.
Thank
It's
God.
a real honor to be able to play still,
Thank God for
and
that. You know, Vince, I remember a few years ago when COVID was, rampant and you weren't so sure if you were going to be able to continue playing. So thank God we got through all that, huh?
have we got 30 seconds?
Yeah, sure,
The
sure.
person who told me to keep going when I was down in the dumps on Facebook, and I said it, I don't know if I'm going to keep going. I got a message, not in private messages, not in Messenger, but right on the under the post by a famous drummer. and because I just liked his page and I
Uh,
didn't know he was following me.
wow.
Liberty DeVito. Shout out to Liberty because Liberty said, "We don't quit. You don't quit. We don't do that." So we went on and we texted with one another through Messenger, and I got to know this guy, and we had a crisscross in our lives because he's from Long Island too. We
Wow.
played in the same places at different times. We were probably crisscrossing Long Island and New York and upstate, and so I have to owe continuing to Liberty. So thanks, Lib.
Thanks.
Appreciate it, bro.
Thanks, Liv. And for all the rock fans out there that want to go see Vince play live, and we're going to end on this episode 3 next month. I urge everybody tune in. We're not going to tell you what it is, but we already know what we're going to be talking about. It'd be quite an
It's a
exciting
secret.
quite an exciting subject, but I already got Vince excited. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye bye.